Hola, necesitas sacar tu paquete de gramática porque vamos a tomar apuntes. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about the preterite of AR verbs. Now, when I say that word preterite, you're probably thinking to yourself, what does that word even mean? What is she talking about? Well, I'm going to tell you. The preterite is one of the two past tenses that we have in Spanish. We are eventually going to learn both of them this year, but we're going to start off with the preterite. And today we're going to be talking about AR verbs in the preterite specifically. Up until now, in your awesome Spanish career, you have learned how to say all kinds of stuff in the present tense. Well, you should be super excited because now you're going to learn how to say all kinds of awesome stuff in the past tense. Let's just talk about a little bit of past tense in English. What is tense? I keep using that word. Well, just to remind you, tense refers to when an action takes place. Up until now, we've always been talking about stuff taking place in the present. Now, we're going to be able to talk about stuff that happened yesterday, last week, last month, last year. Many verbs, and this happens in English and Spanish, they're going to be spelled differently in the past tense than they are in the present tense. For regular verbs, the endings change. Let's look at an example of present tense. He talks. Él habla. You can see my present tense verb endings in English and in Spanish. Now, let's look at this in the past. He talked. Él habló. You can see that my past tense verb endings are different. They change in English and in Spanish. The preterite tense tells what happened at a particular moment in the past. Did you notice that I really emphasized when I said the word happened? That's because a lot of times when we think of the preterite tense, we think of verbs ending in ed in English. Like present tense verbs, you form the preterite tense of regular verbs by adding tense endings to the verb stem. But these are going to be different endings. Real quick, let's review our 3 steps to conjugating. Step 1, drop the infinitive ending. Today we're going to be focusing on AR verbs. Step 2, you're left with the stem, you want to think about the subject. And step 3, add on the new tense ending. It's really important that we realize now we're going to be using preterite tense endings that are completely different. So finally, we have arrived to the information that I'm sure you are dying to know. What are these awesome preterite AR endings? Well, here they are. The yo ending is a, the to ending, aste. My el, ella, usted ending is o. Nosotros, nosotras, amos. And ellos, ellas, usted ending is aron. Let's go ahead and practice conjugating a verb in the preterite tense now. Let's conjugate visitar, which is actually one of the verbs from our current vocabulary, and visitar significa to visit in inglés. Go ahead and pause the video right now and conjugate visitar on your own. Ok, muy bien. Ahora vamos a checar nuestras conjugaciones. Yo visité, tú visitaste, él, ella, usted visitó, nosotros, nosotras visitamos, ellos, ellas, ustedes visitaron. Were those your answers? Muy bien. Vamos a practicar un poco más. Why don't you go ahead and pause the video again and see if you can fill in the spaces and complete my sentence with the correct preterite endings. Ok, vamos a checar nuestras respuestas. A ver, durante las vacaciones yo monté a caballo, mi mamá visitó un museo y mis hermanos nadaron. Were those your answers? Muy bien. Okay, let's stop and think for a moment. Did you notice any similarities between the preterite tense AR endings that I just showed you and the present tense ones we already knew? Think about it. Take a moment. Did any of them look the same? Well, hopefully you noticed that the nosotros ending in the preterite tense is the same as in the present tense. Now in your mind, you're probably thinking, oh, well that's awesome, one less ending to memorize. But it can actually be tricky because sometimes you don't know whether they're talking in the preterite tense in the past or in the present tense. How are you going to figure that out? Let's look at an example. Acampamos anoche en el parque. Okay, my verb is acampamos. When I look at that verb, I see that it has the amos ending, so it's the nosotros form. Uh-oh, we just learned that the nosotros ending in the present tense and the nosotros ending in the preterite tense is the exact same. So when I look at this sentence, how am I going to know if it's in the present or the preterite? Well, what you need to do is you need to use context clues in this sentence, or sometimes even sentences around the sentence you're looking at, to figure out if what the person is saying is in the present tense or is in the past tense. Let's look at this sentence. What is my big context clue that this sentence is either going to be in the preterite or the present tense? Hopefully you recognize that the word anoche means last night in English. Acampamos anoche en el parque. We camped last night in the park. That word anoche, that's my context clue, and it tells me that the verb acampamos is in the preterite tense, not the present. Vamos a practicar un poco más ahora con el verbo acampar. Acampar is another verb from our current vocabulary y significa to camp in inglés. Why don't you go ahead and pause your video right now so you can practice conjugating acampar in the preterite tense on your own. Ok, muy bien. Vamos a checar nuestras conjugaciones. Yo acampé, tú acampaste, él, ella, usted acampó, nosotros, nosotras acampamos, and ellos, ellas, ustedes acamparon. Were those your answers? Muy bien. Ok, ahora vamos a practicar con un verbo más, el verbo tomar. Tomar significa to take in inglés. Tomar is also from our new vocabulary, like tomar fotos. Why don't you go ahead and pause the video one more time so you can practice conjugating tomar en el pretérito, in the preterite. Ok, muy bien. Ahora vamos a checar nuestras conjugaciones. Yo tomé, tú tomaste, él, ella, usted tomó, nosotros, nosotras tomamos, and ellos, ellas, ustedes tomaron. Were those your answers? Muy bien.